And we're back like we never left. Welcome to the very special, not really, Christmas Eve edition of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Christmas Eve with me here in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. So I'm not going to talk about a movie in particular. I may mention movies, but this is not a movie-themed episode. This is a Christmas Eve-themed episode. And when I think, spoiler alert, for those who don't know, I am Jewish. But I have a mom who did not kind of fight against the idea of, if her partner celebrated Christmas, making a huge Christmas dinner for everyone who wanted to attend. It was just part of her process. She loved to cook, and she loved to treat people to her cooking. And she didn't make a big thing about what is the specific holiday that we're cooking for. Because there were times where, let's just say, Hanukkah and Christmas might have had some overlap as far as the days, and she didn't necessarily cook, because for me it's Hanukkah, I'm doing this. No, she just would make a really good meal. And I can tell you that Christmas Eve is important to me for a reason that, well, it's not a very direct reason, but maybe 29 Christmas Eves ago, so this would have been 1995, and my parents had split up in 87. They were together about 20 years and married for 17 plus. And then they split up. And there was a lot of contentiousness, a lot of anger, a lot of nastiness. But then there started to be a kind of thaw. Now, I don't know exactly why or how, but it happened. And I am grateful that it did. So I was living in, at the time, Woodbury with my father. I was going to New York University. I was an undergraduate. And my mother lived still in the house in which I grew up, which was in Massapequa. So she and I had a lot of very serious issues. My senior year in high school was disastrous for a lot of reasons, but the primary reason was that the guy that she was with was basically a criminal scumbag. He was a horrendous, awful, terrible human being who treated me like you would expect someone of that character to treat me. Anything or anyone he perceived as even the slightest threat, he was going to try to fuck with him. And unfortunately, I was too young to really defend myself. And I don't necessarily mean physically. Older me would have handled the situation differently. Older me would have been more direct with how unacceptable his conduct was. And older me would have made above board threats, not threatening violence, but threatening, if you don't stop acting this way, I'm going to call the police. I'm going to call a lawyer and I'm going to get your ass thrown out of here. But I didn't do any of that. So I had issues with my mom. She still had issues with my dad. Dad still had issues with her. But then there was this thaw. And it was subtle. It's not like my mother woke up one day and suddenly said, hey, I feel like I gave your father a needlessly hard time during our marriage, and I really shouldn't have treated him poorly as I did. How's he doing? Or, I just like to see him or talk to him in a context that is not about money or just about our two kids. And my dad never really said anything about that either. But sometime as we approached Christmas of 1995, my mom was making dinner and she invited me over, even though we were Jewish. Her gentleman at the time, who was a good guy, I can point out it's not the same guy that I was discussing. But she was going to make a big Christmas Eve dinner for his family, and they were all going to gather at the house in Piqua. And my mom said, Jared, if you want to come. My sister was still living at home. And then she said, is your dad doing anything? And he also, if he's invited to someone's home, this was something during his life. He wasn't, well, I'm Jewish, I can't go. He was a private guy, but he always liked people cooking for him. And he was not opposed to mixing it up, especially if people he was friendly with or on good terms with. You get into some great conversations, whether it's now, whether it's then. So she said, do you know if is your dad going to be around? And I just thought it was weird that she was asking me. But then I realized she was inviting him. So I don't know. I felt a little bit of a warm, fuzzy sensation. I was 21. I was about to turn 22. And there was something about the way that she was talking. In my mind, my mom was really old. She was 50 at the time. She was younger at that moment than I am sitting here right now. So when we hung up the phone, I asked my father, I said, are you going to be home? Or are you going out or going to someone on Christmas Eve? And he gave me a funny look, like it was a bit of a doofus question. He says, no. Why? I said, well, Mom just told me that she wanted me to ask you if you would like to go with me to the house for Christmas Eve dinner. And my dad, Alan Philip Cohen, may he rest in peace, my dad who has been gone more than 2 years now, he had this look that he would get when he was happily surprised by something. It's hard to describe, but there was a mild sense of embarrassment, like almost turning red from embarrassment. It was a little bit of a smile, and it was a little bit of confusion. It was a very endearing gaze to others because he was private. He didn't say that much. He had a lot to say, but he didn't say that much. He was very careful with who he shared pretty much anything with. So people who knew him, when they would see this, it was good to see. It meant that you surprised him in a good way. It was never a negative. So he gave me this look. And really? I said, yeah, do you think that I would make that up? Why would I make that up? He said, oh, well, that's really nice of her. He was genuinely surprised. Yeah, let's do it. That sounds great. So he went from shock to, okay, no, this is real, and then to excitement. And my parents knew how to behave. Whatever anger they, even at this point, may have still had, they knew how to behave. They weren't going to humiliate one another. They weren't going to get into an argument from 1983. I wasn't worried about any of that. So Dad and I went, and it was completely normal. My mom's guy at the time, who was, he was a funny guy, he didn't have a problem with it. And my dad, it wasn't awkward or weird, and none of the other people who were there made it awkward or weird. I don't know why at the time I just had such a positive feel and such a great sense, but there was something, and now I can identify it 29 years later as a much older person. It meant something to me that my parents didn't want to kill each other anymore. That there was this rapprochement, that there was a respect between the two of them. And not to get morbid, one of the ironies, if you want to say that, is even with all of the nastiness that took place, neither did anything to the will, because I feel like, well, especially my dad, he actually drafted an initial will. He was still in his 40s, just in case. My mother was the executor of the will. Because whatever issues existed between the two of them, he didn't really have any doubt that she was going to do the right thing. He still trusted her when it came to their kids, even if he was enraged over some of the ridiculousness she got into, or she was still angry about the fact that the guy could never take a vacation. He never stopped watching the Yankee game long enough to pay attention. I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but kind of not kidding. but seeing respect, camaraderie even, between my now divorced parents, who I thought still hated each other's guts. Well, I guess they didn't. That's really good, right? And he was invited back to a lot of family gatherings after that, not just Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. Mom, from that point forward until she moved, which was at the end of 2003 into 2004, she always made a point, if she was hosting, ask your dad if he would like to come over. And I don't think she did it out of any sense of obligation or any sense of karmic payback, because in later years she did admit that, I didn't really appreciate your father for for the stuff that he got right. You know, the thing with my old man, he and my mom were, I don't want to say they were a bad match, but they kind of were a bad match, but more from a conceptual standpoint, that they had different ideas of what being a husband, being a father, all of these things. From the time that my dad was a young man, it was beaten into his head. The only thing that really mattered, you got to be a good provider. Got to be a good provider. Whatever it is that you need to do to fulfill that function, that is your primary, secondary, and tertiary function. Make sure, if you can, your kids don't have to worry about money like other people. Make sure your wife can take vacations. Might not be able to go with her. Now, my grandfather wouldn't have talked about it in that manner, but that is what my dad believed. He got a lot of things right. He got the difficult stuff right. He struggled with, you could say, well, wait a minute. He has the money to buy your mother expensive gifts. He just didn't get her a birthday gift. Yeah, he forgot. What do you mean he forgot? Come on. He didn't get her anything for Valentine's Day? Well, he said he was working. Stuff like that. But my mother, once they were no longer together, the things that made her so angry, it didn't bother her that much anymore. And it's not that she was being petty. She had a different idea of what marriage was going to be. Her primary, what she wanted out of a husband, was a husband. That doesn't mean that she was immune to him making a good living, or that there were things that she didn't actually have to worry about, but she wanted to spend a little bit more time with him. I would say that each of them going forward made changes in how they related to others. They did right by one another. When I think of Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, from a broad sense, as some of you have seen the recent episodes know that this is how I see it. I see this as a season of togetherness, of family, of unity, of forgiveness, if possible. It's not always possible. I know this. I am fortunate, and to this day I consider myself fortunate. Not that my father is gone, but that he and my mother had such a wonderful friendship that developed after what could have been the rest of their lives just being angry at each other. Now, I don't know how that happened, but I like to believe that whatever brought them together in the first place, it wasn't just that they were hot for each other. There was a different and deeper connection that was temporarily severed, but not permanently severed. And when I say that they ended up doing right by one another, they did. And when my dad passed, my mom mourned as if they were still together. My dad, in his dying days, told her, with everything that went wrong, with all the stupid stuff that I did, Allie, don't blame yourself. I did more stupid stuff. I would do it all over again, Candy. I would do it all over again with you. They had each other's back. They loved each other, even if they weren't together for the last, 35 years of my father's life. Still loved each other. And my memories of those dinners, there were things that my parents were able to laugh about, that years earlier made them angry. And I know that you want to be able to laugh at yourself, but sometimes emotions run high and you can't. You can't poke fun at yourself. You don't want to seem weak or vulnerable to somebody that you're mad at or whatever it might be. There are ways, to get divorced. And when you have to deal with the other person because you have children, this is how you do it. And I don't think there was any grand plan for either of them. My dad was a different kind of personality, even when they were in dire straits as far as not really getting along at all. And most of the communication was simply checks in the mail. How about the other check? Yeah. Both checks are in the mail. I'm going to pick up the kids on Friday. There were huge chunks where that was it. But every once in a while, my mom would have some kind of an issue. It could be work related. She worked for the IRS. Or something that she couldn't talk to anyone but my dad. And maybe this was part of what brought her around, because they did occasionally have these very serious conversations that had nothing to do with them, but that Alan's the only one that can answer this. He's the only one that I can actually have a conversation because he knows this stuff. And so there was still a level of trust, even at the lowest point. When there were times they had terrible screaming fights that I was not supposed to be privy to. This is where you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. There were moments that I should not have been around. I shouldn't have seen it. It's still burned into memory. What's also burned into memory is the smiles, the laughs when they were both in their 50s and had so much life still to live, even if not with each other. And I remember, to jump ahead a little bit, the last Christmas that I spent with my mom was 2 Christmases ago. I actually went to Florida, and it was kind of comical. Well, more than kind of comical, it was comical. My mom she's such a character that because of that, people who know her, there are things that she does that are funnier because it's her. And because we know that she's a complete, as one of my sister's teachers said, she's a complete space cadet. She's just doing her own thing, marching to her own tune. So there's stuff that she does that is just funnier because it's her. So we went to Florida 2 years ago. I got there, I think it was the 23rd I got there. And Mom had warned me, she says, Jay, I didn't really get that sick, but I've had COVID, and there's a chance I'm still contagious. Okay. Fair warning. So we kind of kept our distance. She was still sneezing and hacking away. What are you going to do? Spoiler alert, I didn't get sick. And nobody else who saw me or saw her during that time frame, no one else got sick. Okay. When she cooked this elaborate pot roast, like it was just an incredible meal. But she had a mask on the whole time. And I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? If we're going to get it, it doesn't matter. You're cooking the food. So just seeing her sitting at the table, I couldn't help it. I didn't want to, I could not stop laughing. But that's her. She wasn't trying to be funny, but she couldn't help it. And then finally she took it off. And then we're playing cards with her guy, Andy, and he's playing like a lunatic. We're playing Texas Hold'em, and Mom was exhausted, and she's like, I think I'm going to go to sleep. But then I start beating him like really, really badly, and he's getting frustrated, and we're screaming with laughter. And as she says, you know what, I'm going to stay up longer because I want you to keep beating him. And it was, to me, the best of this holiday is laughter. And part of that is the sense of community, the sense of family, the sense of friends. There's something to be said for it. And, here I am on Christmas Eve. I am alone. I am here by myself. If I may speak out of pocket for a minute, 2 years ago in Florida with my mother, I was with somebody. And it was an amazing time because that was part of why it was so great. Because if you have a special someone in your life and you get to share this particular holiday, even though I'm Jewish, but this particular holiday with family and with a special someone in your life, it's about as good as it gets. And as a much younger person who struggled so much socially, it's not that it didn't connect. It's just that I didn't think that that was going to happen. So there were many holiday and have been many holiday seasons. And when I lived with my father, we always, for Hanukkah, after mom moved to Florida, again, it's more than 20 years, now 21 plus years that she moved. If you were born when my mother landed in Florida in 2004, you're just about the drinking age now. It's been quite some time. But Dad always, for Hanukkah, he would always make latkes. There was kind of a joke. He was this ace crack CPA, but he made really good potato latkes. He had the recipe, and my old man was a pretty good cook. He didn't look like he would have been a good cook. And some of the guys that he worked with, they used to make fun of him because he liked to clean his own house. Colin, what are you doing? You got to hire somebody for that. Why? Am I too good to do that? Yeah. That sort of thing. But there were and have been a lot of holidays where I have been alone and lonely and feeling isolated. This is now my second Christmas here in this home. I moved in here. The house said the long, sordid, ridiculous story was that the house was ready in June of 2023, but I didn't actually get here until November. But there have been Christmas Eves and Christmas days where I was lonely and felt isolated. And I hate to use the word hopeless because somebody like me should never use that word, but I felt it, even though it really wasn't a hopeless situation. I felt depressed and sad and lonely, kind of hopeless, kind of like a sad sack. Even though people would look and say, bro, what are you talking about? Why would you ever come to that conclusion? Well, you know that sometimes you get down, you start to sink, and it's just how you feel. You might wake up the next day feeling better. But this year, 2024, with all of the total ridicularity that's taken place, as much as 2023 were wild swings, the year 2023 started incredible, turned to shit, then got worse, then got even worse, then got even worse than that. Then we had a rally in the final 4 or 5 months of the year. 2023 ended pretty well. Christmas 2023 was not a bad time. 2024 started okay. Then it turned to shit. And then it got worse. And then it got worse. And it was pretty much awful until the middle of September. And then started trending in the right direction again. And here, although I am by myself, there are no other humans in this house. I'm not lonely. I don't feel alone. I don't feel isolated. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now on Christmas Eve of 2024. I've gotten a lot of lucky breaks, what I would call unearned good fortune. But there have been enough moments that I can point to where when I needed to step up, when I needed to stand up, when I needed to not turn around and walk away, but I needed to actually continue advancing forward, I did it. I do wish that I was with my mother and her guy and my sister for the holidays. It would be great, but it's not always prudent. And to be more specific, you know what? I don't care if you judge me on this one. It's okay. It doesn't matter. I still have issues with vertigo. And right now, although I don't have active vertigo symptoms, I'm really nervous about flying because I would say for those of you who have had vertigo, if you try to imagine an active attack while you're flying, that's not something you even want to contemplate. So that's the main reason why I did not go to Florida this holiday season to see my mother. I hope to be able to see her soon. She'll make a trip to New York, but I hope to be able to fly soon. Now, when I say this, I'm cleared to fly. The doctor didn't say, no, don't go flying. My ears, everything looks okay, but I still struggle with the occasional wobble and just a sense of general, it's hard to explain, but it's like if you close your eyes, your brain is sensing movement that is not existing. And nothing is actually spinning. It's the fact that there is a disconnect. That's where the vertigo, but I don't want to get bogged down in vertigo, but that's why I'm not with my mother at this time of year. I'm sure that she would be cooking up a storm. But this is my favorite time of year. I don't like freezing. We just had this unbelievable cold weather here where burst pipes, if you weren't careful. I have like the PVC pipes. I don't think they can burst, but if you don't keep it running, they can sure as fuck freeze. And then what are you going to do? They're frozen pipes. You hope that nothing bursts. But it is the most wonderful time of the year. Not for everybody, but it can be. And just hearing the Christmas music in stores, seeing the excitement of people, of children, hoping against hope for a gift. That's one thing that the movie A Christmas Story does better than any other Christmas movie. The excitement of the season, that you really, really want the Red Ryder, BB gun with the thing on it, a thing that tells time, whatever it is that Ralphie says in A Christmas Story. Maybe next year we will reunite. Maybe I'll be in Florida next year. Maybe my mom will be here. Maybe my sister, maybe the three of us. We had such a great time when they visited me over the summer. I wish we could do it more often. But that's the thing. We're in 3 different states. My sister's in New Hampshire. My mother's in Florida. Here I am in New York. But Merry Christmas Eve. And in case I don't mention it all, I probably will. Merry Christmas at midnight to all who celebrate. And even people like me who don't specifically celebrate this holiday, but look forward to it and treasure those moments that we have the opportunity to spend with beloved family and with friends, with important people in our life. And I believe in that. I didn't when I was younger, but the experience of my parents' rapprochement and my mom reaching out an olive branch and just kind of shaking free of whatever anger she still had. It's just, 'tis the season. Not even in this case to be jolly, but 'tis the season to forgive. 'Tis the season to come together if you can, to laugh, to love, to smile, to remember the good times. Doesn't always have to be bad, but to be part of something, whatever it is. And here tonight, I have my 2 adorable cats, and I'm looking forward to having a great day tomorrow on Christmas Day. See the smile? It's genuine, really in a good frame of mind. And as always, I'm just about the luckiest person you're ever going to know or meet, even through social media. This has been episode number 394 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your, hopefully, Merry Christmas Eve here with me in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, Merry Christmas Eve to all, and to all a good night. Peace.